Cardano has even more drama. Two major projects are fighting, and this is spilling over into the Cardano ecosystem. And people are worried, is it impossible to have a functioning dApp on the platform? So I decided to take this into my own hands and find out what in the world is going on. And let's start out with the beef. There are two companies in question here. Sundaeswap, who's the most popular decentralized exchange on Cardano. This is where people on the network can swap tokens. And Cardstarter, who is the first launchpad on Cardano. And you can think of a launchpad like a crypto startup incubator. Now to the timeline. April 24th, Cardstarter announces their decentralized exchange, CardSwap. April 29th, Cardstarter announces their liquidity mining program on Ethereum. This did a few things. It would allow investors to provide liquidity to the card ecosystem, meaning once they launch on Cardano, they would have the money to make sure that things run smoothly. And investors would ideally receive a nice return on investment in the meantime. Anyone providing liquidity at this stage would eventually see their tokens migrated over to Cardano once CardSwap was up and running on that blockchain. June 12th, Cardstarter offers a sneak peek on how their DEX will look. And here we have a bit of dead air. It's where things get pretty strange. And I'm going to come back to this time period in just a second, because first I need to tell you real quick about my Patreon. In there, I post all of my buy and sell alerts. And as you probably know, the markets have been down, so I had to get a tad creative. Here is a hedged stock buy of mine that's up more than 14% net in the last 3 days. If you'd like to get access to buy alerts just like that one and a ton of additional content, make sure you grab a spot as soon as possible, linked in the description below. So the last update we had was June 12th. Then Sundaeswap and Cardstarter announced a partnership on July 1st. These two companies were looking to have a kind of mutually beneficial agreement. Basically, Cardstarter would benefit in the crypto projects that they launch, would then have a large platform to trade those tokens on, and Sundaeswap would benefit because Cardstarter would deposit some amount of liquidity onto the Sunday platform to help make trades flow much more smoothly upon launch. Then the next day, on July 2nd, a press release from Cointelegraph states, quote, all current and future TVL raised from Cardstarter's initial DEX offerings would be directly funneled to Sundaeswap. At this point, there was some agreement made between Sundaeswap and Cardstarter, where Cardstarter would receive an amount of Sunday tokens in exchange for the money that they would bring to the Sunday platform. And it's important to note that at this point in time, Cardstarter had much more popularity and name recognition than Sunday did, who was a very, very new project at the time. Now, going back to that strange period, in the matter of about 2 weeks between mid-June and early July, Cardstarter went from announcing how their DEX will look to ending the project completely in order to partner with Sundaeswap. Now, this isn't necessarily weird in and of itself that they ended the project. It's weird that I can't find an actual post online about the decision to end the project. Not on their Medium, where they post multiple times every week. Not on their Twitter, where there's somehow zero mention whatsoever of CardSwap ever existing. And this matters because, remember, they were already offering this token for sale to investors with the promise to eventually port over to Cardano from Ethereum. This means in the new partnership, card token holders will somehow benefit from the Sunday token upon launch because of this merger of some kind. We don't have the exact details though, because apparently these details are an agreement that's protected by an NDA. So I did a bit of digging and I found an AMA with Ashwin, who's the senior operations advisor of Cardstarter. They were talking about this new partnership. In this AMA, it said that the partnership is a very deep connection.
This is an amalgamation. This is, in essence, a merger.
Later, Sundaeswap would say that this was nothing but a marketing and collaboration agreement. Ashwin goes on to say that there are two legal teams working hard at the details on this.
We have, I guess, multiple legal departments now. We thought our legal team was strict, but our partners are just as strict.
That everyone should remain faithful.
Ultimately, what I can say is everyone should remain faithful and, have an idea that there's, they will be taken care of. As far as CSwap, I mean, you guys are getting obviously an amazing end of this deal.
That there's nothing to be worried about.
Rest assured, there's nothing to be worried about.
And here's what they had to say about how card token holders will be redeemed for Sunday at merger.
The folks that have been diligently mining away and providing liquidity will be excited, if not surprised, at the benefit relative to what was expected.
So at this point, holders are left with a few answers and a whole lot of questions. All they know is their investment in CardSwap will be worth some amount of Sunday upon launch. And due to the fact that both teams have rigorous lawyers, Not much else can be said. Unfortunately, from here, we have months of dead air between July and the end of October. It's at this point where we can see there's a screenshot from the CEO of Cardstarter chatting with the Sunday team. He says that the Cardstarter community is very frustrated, understandably, that they haven't received information on how much they'll receive in this card/Sunday token conversion. And you might think that this sounds strange right out the gate. This message is more than 3 months after the AMA that we just listened to. And remember, in that AMA, Cardstarter seemed pretty certain that those two teams of lawyers had already ironed everything out. They're good to go. They just can't announce those details due to the pesky SEC. That can't be the case given it's now October and even the Cardstarter CEO doesn't know the terms. So Sunday responded to the request and said 150 million tokens are set aside for the Cardstarter partnership. Remember those words, set aside. This took the heat off of the Cardstarter team for a while, until January 18th, just 2 days before the Sundaeswap official launch. According to a screenshot provided by Cardstarter, the Sunday team sent an email stating they are lowering the allocation from 150 million tokens to 10 million in exchange for Cardstarter's liquidity. They were doing this because Cardstarter's liquidity was far lower than originally expected. They would be providing far less benefit to Sundaeswap, who is now much more popular than Cardstarter, and they have their own liquidity. Of course, the Cardstarter team and investors then go into an uproar saying that they were tricked and rugged, and the card token tanks more than 60% in just a few days. But it's not over yet. Then we have the actual launch of the Sundaeswap DEX on the 20th of January. At this point, many people who tried to use the DEX experienced errors and issues due to network congestion. This frustrated many who lost faith in the project, but it didn't surprise anyone who was paying attention because they actually made a blog post before the launch basically saying to expect these exact problems. But that didn't seem to matter to investors who saw the Sunday and Cardstarter beef and then felt that the project simply wasn't up to par. So where does this leave us? Well, from Cardstarter, we have the screenshots that I showed you. From Sunday, we have a blog post. In this post, Sundaeswap states that despite their June agreement being bound by an NDA, so we can't get the full details, there was nothing in that agreement about explicit token exchange rates. The only verbiage was that they would have a good faith discussion regarding trading card tokens for Sunday tokens upon full DEX launch. This seems plausible to me. However, of course, we don't have the actual documents to look at, so it's their word versus Cardstarter's. Here's what I think happened. I think Sunday was just starting off. They solved a few technical problems on their DEX and impressed Cardstarter, who was the big dog on campus with all the liquidity back in June of last year. Looking at this chart, we can see Cardstarter had about $60 million locked on platform. Both teams saw this as a great partnership and expected TVL to only increase on Cardstarter. But it didn't. In fact, by January, it had dropped by more than 70%, meaning this deal was now worth 70% less to Sundaeswap, who was now the most popular dApp on Cardano and no longer needed Cardstarter. But what about the contract, you ask? Well, we know for certain that the contract didn't contain actual figures on how much card token holders would receive in equivalent Sunday, because we have screenshots of their discussion from October where the agreement is yet to be made. This is an issue because the Cardstarter team had the AMA where they flat out say, don't worry, card holders, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Ultimately, what I can say is everyone should remain faithful.
Rest assured, there's nothing to be worried about.
They said this without actually being sure of that fact. So January comes along, and I'm sure the Sunday team was sitting around talking about how they have to give away 7.5% of their business for very little benefit, and they took advantage of the fact that there was no signed contract on how much they absolutely needed to give Cardstarter. So they lowered that distribution from 7.5% down to 0.5%, 10 million tokens. Then the community, of course, gets mad. There's backlash, and Sundaeswap doubles it to 20 million tokens in an attempt to save face while still coming out ahead. They're still saving 6.5% of their business. To me, more than anything, this highlights the lack of experience on both ends. Cardstarter being pretty obvious, giving false promises on tens of millions of dollars, and Sunday for not resolving these issues and having everything in writing in a contract in the first place. Crypto is a new space filled with many people who simply haven't done that many deals in the past, and things like this can get glossed over, even if they say they have multiple legal teams working on the details. Now, if only there was someone who warned us about the concerns and potential inexperience. Many have said that the team is too inexperienced and not having enough of a background to successfully make this massive undertaking happen. So how does this impact Cardano as a whole? Fundamentally, it doesn't at all. IOHK has no control over who builds on Cardano nor who fights with who. So while it's not a great look, it doesn't highlight any fundamental issues with Cardano. And the second question is, with all these issues on the functionality of Sundaeswap as a DEX, can we even trust a functioning dApp can be built on Cardano? And the short answer is yes. Cardano is a much more robust blockchain than many others and uses a completely different accounting model than something like Ethereum. So entirely new solutions are having to be built, and this is taking a long time. The good news is these solutions can be overcome. There's another blockchain called Ergo that uses the exact same accounting model as Cardano, and they have fully functional DEXs as we speak. On top of this, this is the year of scalability for Cardano. Once we see these scaling solutions roll out this year, we'll see far less congestion and issues on the network. Does this mean Cardano is a guaranteed Ethereum killer? No. Of course not. We can't be certain. However, we can be certain that Cardano and its dApps are getting better and better with time. As I've mentioned before, Cardano is taking the tortoise approach. Looking back at history, we've seen examples of this working with companies like Apple, but we've also seen the reverse work quite well, like Facebook. So only time will tell who wins in the end. I hope that this was helpful in understanding what in the world is going on with Cardano, and I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, iTrust Capital. With iTrust, you can actually place your crypto in a Roth retirement account. This means you can buy, sell, and trade crypto to your heart's content and pay no capital gains on your wins. This is amazing for traders. iTrust will be linked in the description, and if you use that link to open an account, you'll actually receive $100 in Bitcoin free for joining. And that's going to do it for today. I would like to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.